The dust swirled through the streets of Fort Promise like a living thing, carrying with it the weight of fear and uncertainty. Sarah McAllister stood at the window of her father's general store, watching the Apache delegation ride into town. Her fingers trembled against the wooden frame, knowing that somewhere among those riders was the man who would become her husband. Not by choice, but by necessity. The treaty had been signed 3 days ago. After 2 years of brutal conflict that had claimed lives on both sides, the settler community and the Apache tribe had finally agreed to peace. But peace, Sarah had learned, always came with a price. And she was that price. Sarah? Her father's voice was heavy behind her. Colonel Thomas McAllister had aged 10 years in the past too. His weathered hand rested on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, daughter. If there was any other way—" "There isn't," Sarah interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. "You've told me a dozen times. A union between our peoples. A symbol of trust. I understand, father. But understanding and accepting were two different things entirely. The Apache warrior chosen for her was named Dakota, which she'd been told meant friend to all. The irony wasn't lost on her. How could she be friends with, let alone married to, a man whose people had killed her brother just 6 months ago? How could she share a life with someone from a world so different from her own? The ceremony took place at sunset, as was Apache custom. Sarah wore her mother's wedding dress, the white lace feeling like a shroud rather than a celebration. Dakota stood across from her in traditional Apache clothing, his long black hair adorned with a single eagle feather, turquoise beads gleaming at his neck. He was tall and powerfully built, his face unreadable as stone. Reverend Walsh conducted a brief Christian ceremony, followed by an Apache elder who spoke in words Sarah couldn't understand but felt in her bones. Ancient, powerful, binding. When Dakota took her hand, his grip was firm but not painful. His dark eyes met hers for the first time, and she saw something unexpected there, sadness that matched her own. The wedding feast was an uncomfortable affair, settlers and Apache sitting at opposite ends of long tables, eyeing each other with suspicion despite the supposed peace. Sarah barely touched her food. When the time came to leave to follow Dakota to the Apache camp in the foothills, her legs nearly refused to move. "Be brave, Sarah," her father whispered, embracing her. "Write to me when you can?" She wanted to scream that she didn't want to be brave, that she wanted her old life back, wanted to wake up and find this all a nightmare. Instead, she nodded, mounted the horse Dakota brought for her, and rode away from everything she'd ever known. The Apache camp was nothing like she'd imagined. Instead of the savage wilderness she'd been taught to fear, she found a community. Wickiups, dome-shaped dwellings made of wooden frames and covered with brush, dotted the landscape in organized rows. Children played while women worked on various tasks, pausing to stare at the white woman in the wedding dress. Dakota's wickiup was larger than most, positioned near the center of the camp. He held the entrance flap open for her, and she ducked inside, her heart hammering. The interior was surprisingly spacious and neat, with woven blankets, storage baskets, and a fire pit in the center. "You sleep there?" Dakota said in careful English, pointing to a bedroll on one side. "I sleep here." He indicated another bedroll on the opposite side. "You are safe." Sarah blinked in surprise. She'd spent the entire ride imagining the worst, steeling herself for horrors her mind had conjured. "You speak English?" "Some. I learned from missionary when I am young. Before—" He paused, and pain flickered across his features. "Before the wars." That night, Sarah lay awake on her bedroll, staring at the smoke hole above where stars gleamed like distant promises. Across the fire, Dakota's breathing was steady but not the rhythm of sleep. Neither of them rested easy. The days that followed were the strangest of Sarah's life. She was an outsider in every sense, unable to speak the language, unfamiliar with the customs, constantly aware of the stares and whispered conversations that followed her. But Dakota, to her surprise, was patient. He began teaching her Apache words and phrases, practical things first. Water, food, thank you, the names of things around the camp. His teaching method was simple. He would point, say the word, and wait for her to repeat it. When she got it wrong, he never showed frustration, just said it again, slower. In return, Sarah taught him more English. They would sit by the fire in the evenings, this strange married couple who shared no common language beyond broken attempts at communication, trying to build bridges with words. "Why do you do this?" Sarah asked one night, about a week into her new life. "Help me learn." "You don't have to." Dakota considered the question, his face illuminated by firelight. "You are here because of peace. Peace is not just not fighting. Peace is understanding. You understand my people understand you. Maybe peace lasts." It was a longer speech than he usually gave, and it struck Sarah with unexpected force. He wasn't just going through the motions of this arranged marriage. He actually believed in what it represented. "You really think one marriage can bridge the divide between our peoples?" she asked. "No," he admitted. "But it is start." Rivers begin with single drop of rain. Sarah found herself spending more time with Dakota as the weeks passed. He would take her on walks around the camp, introducing her to people, explaining Apache ways. She met his grandmother, a wizened woman named Nasha who initially regarded Sarah with open hostility but gradually warmed when she saw the girl's genuine attempts to learn and adapt. Nasha taught Sarah how to prepare traditional foods, how to identify useful plants, how to properly maintain the wickiup. The work was harder than anything Sarah had done in her father's store, but there was a rhythm to it, a connection to the land and seasons that she'd never experienced. Dakota took her hunting, not for large game, but to show her how Apache tracked and read the land. He moved through the wilderness like water, silent and sure, pointing out signs Sarah would never have noticed at a broken branch, tracks in the dust, the behavior of birds that indicated danger or safety. "You see with your eyes," he told her, "but you must also see with your heart. The land speaks to those who listen." Sarah tried. She really did. And slowly, incredibly, she began to understand what he meant. The desert wasn't the harsh, lifeless place she'd thought. It was teeming with life and beauty for those who knew how to look. 2 months into the marriage, Sarah received her first letter from her father. Dakota brought it to her, having ridden to Fort Promise to maintain the tenuous peace. Sarah's hand shook as she opened it. Her father wrote of how the town was doing, of the crops, of mutual friends. He asked if she was well, if she was being treated fairly. He wrote with the careful distance of a man who didn't know if his daughter could speak freely or if her letters might be read by hostile eyes. Sarah sat down to reply immediately and found herself struggling with what to say. How could she explain that she was being treated better than she'd expected? That Dakota was not the savage warrior she'd been taught to fear, but a man of honor and surprising gentleness. That she was beginning to see the Apache not as enemies but as people. Complex, contradictory, human people. She wrote carefully, trying to find words that would reassure her father without betraying the confusing tangle of her own emotions. That night, as she and Dakota sat by their fire, she finally asked the question that had been building for weeks. Did you have someone?" Before me, Dakota stared into the flames for a long moment. "Yes, her name was Kai. She was killed in raid, by settlers." The words hung between them like a physical presence. Sarah felt her stomach turn. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "How could you know?" His voice was quiet, not accusing. "You lost brother, yes. Your father told counsel?" "James," he was 19. She couldn't finish. "War takes from everyone," Dakota said. "Both sides lose. Both sides hurt. That is why peace is necessary. That is why we are here." "Do you hate me?" Sarah asked, the question emerging before she could stop it. "For being a settler? For looking like the people who killed Kai?" Dakota turned to look at her fully, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "At first I was angry. Angry at the treaty, angry at being forced to marry, angry at everything. But hate you? No, you did not kill Kai. You did not start the war. You are here because, like me, you want peace? Or at least, you accept it must happen." "I don't know what I want anymore," Sarah admitted. "I used to be so certain about everything, who the good people were, who the bad people were. Now nothing is simple. Nothing was ever simple," Dakota said. "We just told ourselves it was. Easier to fight when enemy has no face, no story, no heart." As winter approached, the relationship between Sarah and Dakota shifted in subtle ways. They had progressed from wary strangers to something resembling genuine companionship. They laughed together, broken, halting laughter over Sarah's mispronunciations or Dakota's creative attempts at English idioms. They worked together, fell into comfortable silences together, existed in a shared space that no longer felt like a prison. But there remained a distance between them, a wall neither had attempted to cross. They were partners in peace, roommates in marriage, but not husband and wife in any real sense. They still slept on opposite sides of the wickiup, still maintained careful boundaries. The change came during the first snow. Sarah had gone out to gather firewood and had wandered too far, mesmerized by the unfamiliar sight of snow in the desert landscape. When she tried to return, the blizzard had intensified and she couldn't find her way back to camp. The cold bit through her inadequate clothing and panic began to set in. Dakota found her shivering under an overhang, her lips blue, her fingers numb. He didn't waste words. He stripped off his own warm outer layer and wrapped it around her, then lifted her into his arms and carried her back through the storm. In the wickiup, he built up the fire and wrapped them both in blankets, using his body heat to warm her. "Foolish," he muttered, but his voice was thick with concern. Very foolish, Sarah. I'm sorry, she said through chattering teeth. I just wanted to see the snow. We got snow back home, but never like this, never in the desert. This is your home now? Dakota said, and something in the way he said it made Sarah's heart clench. Not angry or demanding, just stating a simple truth. You must learn to be safe here. As feeling returned to her limbs, Sarah became aware of how close they were, Dakota's arms around her, their bodies pressed together for warmth. She had grown accustomed to his presence, but this was different. This was intimate? Dakota, she said softly, why have you been so kind to me? Really, he was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Because anger changes nothing. Because Kai would not want me to live with hate. Because when I look at you, I see someone who is also scared, also lost, also trying to survive impossible thing. How can I not be kind? Sarah turned in his arms to face him. I thought you would hate me. I thought this would be unbearable. But you've given me something I didn't expect. What is that? Hope. That maybe people can change. That maybe we can be more than our grief and anger. Dakota's hand came up, gently touching her face. You are stronger than you know, Sarah. You came here with fear, but you stayed with courage. You could have remained bitter and closed, but you opened your heart to learning, to seeing us as human. That takes great strength. I had a good teacher, she whispered. The kiss was tentative, questioning a bridge finally crossed. When they parted, Dakota rested his forehead against hers. We moved too fast, maybe, Sarah admitted. But maybe we've also moved too slowly. We're married, Dakota. We've been dancing around that truth for months. I did not want to force. You've never forced anything, Sarah interrupted. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You've shown me respect when you could have demanded obedience. You've shown me patience when you could have expected instant adaptation. You've shown me love, I think, in ways I didn't recognize because I was looking for the wrong things. Love. Dakota repeated the word carefully. Not the love in fairy tales my mother used to read me, Sarah said. Something stronger. Built on respect and understanding and choice. We didn't choose this marriage, but we can choose what it becomes. That night, they didn't sleep on opposite sides of the wickiup. The spring brought new challenges. A faction of settlers, angry at the peace treaty and the intermarriage it represented, began making trouble. They attacked an Apache hunting party, breaking the treaty. In retaliation, young Apache warriors wanted to raid Fort Promise. Sarah and Dakota found themselves in the middle, trying to prevent the fragile peace from shattering. Together, they rode between the two camps, arguing for restraint, for dialogue, for giving the treaty more time. You've gone native, one settler spat at Sarah, betrayed your own kind. I've chosen humanity over hatred, Sarah shot back. I've learned that my own kind includes anyone who values peace and life over endless war and death. At the Apache camp, Dakota faced similar accusations. She has made you weak, a warrior named Karuk challenged. You forget our dead. I forget nothing, Dakota replied, his voice like steel. But I choose to honor our dead by building a future worth living in, not by creating more dead for others to mourn. It was Sarah's impassioned speech to the settler council that finally turned the tide. Standing before the people she'd grown up with, including her father, she spoke from the heart. I was sent to the Apache as a sacrifice, she said. A pawn in a game of politics and power. I went unwillingly, certain I was being sent to my doom. But I found something I never expected, a people not so different from us. They love their children. They mourn their dead. They hope for the future. They're not monsters. They're human beings trying to survive on land that's been theirs for generations before we arrived. She paused, looking directly at her father. And I found something else I didn't expect: love. Real love built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Dakota could have treated me as property. Instead, he treated me as an equal. He taught me when he could have demanded obedience. He protected me when he could have abandoned me. He showed me what it means to be strong enough to be gentle, brave enough to be kind. You're asking us to forgive what they've done. Someone shouted. I'm asking you to recognize what we've done, Sarah countered. This land was theirs. We came here, took it, and when they resisted, we called them savages. Both sides have blood on their hands. Both sides have lost people we love, but we can choose differently now. We can honor our dead by building peace, or we can dishonor them by continuing the cycle of violence until there's no one left to mourn. The room fell silent. Then her father stood, tears in his eyes. My daughter is wiser than her father. I vote to honor the treaty and punish those who broke it. The crisis passed. The troublemakers on both sides were dealt with. The treaty held. Sarah continued to live with the Apache, but now she moved freely between both worlds. She became an interpreter, not just of language but of culture, helping each side understand the other. She taught Apache children English and settler children Apache. She helped Apache women sell their crafts at the fort and taught settler women Apache techniques for desert survival. And through it all, Dakota was by her side, her partner, her husband, her friend. One evening, a year after their wedding, they sat together watching the sunset paint the desert in impossible colors. Sarah's hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, the first visible sign of the new life growing within her. "What do you think?" she asked. "If it's a boy, James. If it's a girl, Kai." Dakota's hand covered hers, protective and tender. "To honor those we've lost." "Yes, good names. Our child will belong to both worlds," Sarah mused. "Neither fully one nor the other." "No," Dakota corrected gently. "Our child will help create new world. One where being both is not weakness but strength." Sarah leaned into him, marveling at how natural it felt, this closeness that once seemed impossible. "You know what's funny? I came here thinking I was giving up my life for peace. Instead, I found a life worth living. I found you." "I also thought I was making sacrifice," Dakota admitted, "trading happiness for duty. But you taught me that duty and happiness are not always enemies. That sometimes what we think is burden is actually gift." "We're quite the pair," Sarah laughed. "Forced together by politics, bound together by choice. Is that not true love?" Dakota asked. "Not the easy love of those who start with everything in common, but the hard love of those who must build every bridge themselves, who choose each other again and again despite every reason to turn away." Sarah turned to kiss him, tasting salt and sweetness, feeling his smile against her lips. "You've become quite the philosopher." "I have good teacher," he said, echoing her words from months ago. As the stars emerged above them, Sarah thought about the girl she'd been. Frightened, resentful, certain that her life was ending. That girl hadn't known that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as sacrifices, that sometimes the people we're taught to fear are exactly the ones we need to know. She hadn't known what real love meant. She'd thought it was flowers and poetry and comfortable sameness. Dakota had shown her it was so much more, and it was patience when everything was hard. It was respect when power could be claimed. It was choosing kindness when anger would be easier. It was building something beautiful from impossible circumstances, together. The forced marriage that began as a political necessity had become something neither could have predicted: a genuine partnership, a true love story, and a living symbol that peace wasn't just possible, it was worth fighting for. In the wickiup that night, as they lay together, Sarah whispered into the darkness, "I love you." Dakota's response came in Apache, then English, then in the language they'd created together, the one built from patience and understanding, from shared experience and chosen commitment. "I love you, my wife, my friend, my heart." And in that moment, Sarah understood that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never planned for, the ones that force us to grow beyond who we thought we could be. She'd been sent to the Apache to build peace. Instead, she'd found home.